Welcome to today's deep dive. We're really glad you're here with us. Today we're digging into this incredibly timely excerpt. It's called Chapter 8, The Remote Work Revolution Freedom, or Just Work in Your Pajamas.
Yeah, the classic pants optional lifestyle question.
Exactly. And, our mission for this deep dive is to really cut through the hype of that whole pajama living fantasy. We want to help you figure out if remote work is actually right for you and what it genuinely takes to make it function.
Because it takes a lot more than most people think.
Right. I mean, remote work was essentially sold to all of us like this fabulous all-inclusive vacation. You were promised the absolute dream, like zero commute, total flexibility. But it turns out that on this particular vacation, you actually have to, cook your own meals, clean the pool yourself, and somehow constantly remind your boss that you actually still exist.
That is the perfect way to put it. The marketing just drastically outpaced the reality for this.
Oh, totally.
We developed this really pervasive cultural narrative that remote work is like the ultimate moral virtue. Like it's this universal goal every professional should just inherently be striving for.
Right. Like if you're in an office, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. But the source material makes it really clear that boots on the ground, remote work isn't a moral victory at all. It is simply a tool. And like any tool, it comes with this massive, highly complex series of trade-offs.
Yeah.
Operating that tool successfully requires an intense level of intentionality, logistically and psychologically. And frankly, very few of us were equipped for that when we first brought our monitors home and shoved them onto our kitchen tables.
So before we can even get into how to fix the problems, we really need a reality check. Like, we have to strip away this binary label of it being inherently good or bad and just look at the actual ledger of pros and cons.
Let's do it.
Because the pros are undeniable. I mean, you have zero commute, right? Which immediately puts money back in your pocket and gives you hours of your life back.
Oh, absolutely. The time savings alone is huge.
Yeah, and you get unprecedented flexibility, the ability to just, throw a load of laundry in the wash between your Zoom meetings.
Or run to a midday doctor's appointment without making it a dramatic spectacle for the entire office.
Yes, exactly.
Plus, you gain location independence. Depending on your role, that might mean moving closer to aging parents or moving to a city with a lower cost of living or, frankly, just working from a different environment for a month.
Which is amazing, and there's the sheer comfort factor, too.
Right, environmental control. You set your own thermostat, you control the lighting, no more those soul-crushing fluorescent office bulbs.
Oh, I hate those things.
And you eliminate hey, just a quick question, interruptions from coworkers that just completely derail your deep focus.
But, the ledger has a brutal flip side. The cons are very real. The isolation can be intense. Like, if you live alone, you might literally go 3 or 4 days without physically speaking out loud to another human being.
Yeah, which is psychologically incredibly taxing.
And then you have these severely blurred boundaries. Your home is now your office, which means the work never actually leaves. Your laptop is just sitting there on the kitchen island staring at you while you chop onions for dinner.
Just waiting for you.
Right, and that bleeds directly into technology fatigue and this really insidious, always-on culture.
Yeah, that pressure to be constantly available. And we have to mention the in-betweens here, right? Because there's a massive gray area.
What do you mean by the in-betweens?
Well, your success with remote work depends almost entirely on your specific role, your company's systems, and your life stage.
Oh, right.
Doing this as a single 20-something in a tiny studio apartment is a fundamentally different psychological experience than, say, doing it as a senior executive with a dedicated soundproof home office in the suburbs.
The environment completely dictates the experience.
Exactly.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to push back on one piece of this ledger really quick.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't the lack of a commute just an undisputed universal win? I mean, if you are getting 10 to 15 hours back in your week, how could eliminating that traffic jam possibly have a downside?
I know, it seems completely counterintuitive, and the literal time you save is fantastic. But from a neurological standpoint, the physical commute actually served a really crucial hidden function.
Wait, really? A hidden function?
There's a liminal space. That drive or that train ride, it was a cognitive decompression chamber. Your brain actively used that time to transition from home mode to threat monitoring work mode and then back again.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right, your nervous system used that physical distance as a literal boundary. So without that commute, your brain never officially clocks out. You never physically leave the building.
So the low-grade stress of the workday just seeps right into your evening.
Exactly. You save an hour of driving, but you pay for it by keeping your cortisol levels elevated right up until you go to sleep.
Which means you never truly disconnect. That actually leads perfectly into the hardest question you have to ask yourself, which is, are you actually built for this?
Yeah, it requires a brutally honest self-assessment.
Because remote work relies so heavily on your own personal circumstances and your own executive function.
And that really comes down to how you process structure. You're highly likely to thrive remotely if you are naturally self-motivated and you're comfortable with asynchronous communication.
Meaning you don't panic if you don't get an immediate answer to a Slack message.
Right. You do what if you don't need external scaffolding, like a manager physically standing there to keep you on task.
But on the flip side, you will struggle immensely if your best ideas only come from chaotic, real-time, in-person whiteboarding sessions.
Oh, absolutely. Or if you rely on the social pressure of a busy office to stay focused.
Yeah, or if you have a chaotic home environment and you don't have the physical space to build a dedicated work zone.
You're just setting yourself up for daily failure at that point.
It's like working from your bed. I always say it's exactly like eating every single meal in your car.
That is a great analogy.
It is wondrously, luxuriously convenient the very first time you do it. But eventually, it completely ruins the upholstery, it destroys your posture, and you just end up feeling really gross.
Yeah, that is exactly what happens to your brain when you blend your rest space with your stress space.
Rest space and stress space, wow.
Yeah, the physical setup isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. You really need a dedicated work zone, even if it's just a specific corner of the living room that you only ever use for work.
Right.
You need a proper ergonomic chair, and you need natural lighting to regulate your circadian rhythm. But beyond the furniture, you have to actually manufacture the structure you lost when you left the office. You have to create a fake commute.
A fake commute. Okay, that sounds a little ridiculous at first, like putting on a coat to walk around the block just to come back inside and sit at your own desk.
It sounds totally absurd, I know. But human beings run on biological signaling. Your brain maps environments and behaviors.
Okay.
So when you wake up, put on a coat, walk outside, and then sit at a specific desk, you are firing a sequence of psychological triggers.
Yeah.
You are telling your nervous system to boot up its executive function.
Oh, so it's the same reason you have to actually get dressed. Like, changing out of your sleep sweatpants and putting on your work sweatpants isn't just a joke,
It's behavioral priming.
Yes.
Yes, you have to take your lunch away from your screen, and you absolutely must build a strict shutdown ritual at the end of the day.
Because if you don't establish those triggers, the boundaries collapse entirely, which pulls you straight into the dark side of remote work.
The really dark side.
Yeah, the two biggest pitfalls mentioned in the text are isolation and the always-on trap. Let's look at isolation first, because I feel like it really sneaks up on you.
It does. You go from this buzzing office full of micro interactions to just complete silence.
Right. And there are very clear warning signs, like you suddenly realize at 4:30 p.m. that you haven't actually used your vocal cords all day.
That's a huge red flag.
Or worse, your work starts feeling entirely transactional. You're just moving digital tasks across the screen, completely divorced from the relational, human aspect of your career.
And that transactional feeling strips the humanity right out of the job, which is what accelerates burnout. And the thing about isolation is it doesn't fix itself. It compounds.
So you have to actively fight it.
Aggressively combat it, yeah. That might mean forcing yourself to work from a coffee shop twice a week just to be immersed in the ambient hum of other human beings.
Or scheduling virtual coffee chats.
Right, but the strict rule has to be that you are not allowed to talk about project deliverables during those chats.
Just actual human connection.
Exactly. Or it means joining a local run club, a volunteer group, or, frankly, getting a pet.
A pet.
Yeah, a dog or a cat introduces this living, breathing entity into your space that forces you to adhere to a routine outside of your screen. You have to walk the dog, right?
That makes total sense. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. The wild irony here is how that isolation actually feeds directly into the second massive pitfall, the always-on trap.
Oh, they are completely linked.
Right. You know that creeping anxiety you get at 8:30 p.m. when your phone buzzes with a Slack notification?
The worst.
You don't actually have to answer it, but you do it anyway. Because in our sheer desperation to prove to leadership that we aren't just slacking off on the couch watching Netflix, we accidentally trap ourselves into never taking a real day off.
We wildly overcompensate. It's a massive overcorrection.
Yeah.
The initial fear of remote work was that everyone would be too distracted to get anything done.
Right, that productivity would tank.
But the actual danger turned out to be that nobody ever stops working
Ever.
because the laptop is constantly sitting right there on the dining table. And because you might feel, a pang of guilt about taking 20 minutes to walk your dog at noon, you find yourself answering emails at the dinner table to make up for it.
Or checking messages from bed.
Yes, the boundary completely dissolves until your entire life is just a waiting room for your next task.
And it becomes this self-perpetuating expectation. Like if you answer that ping at 9 p.m., you just trained your team that you are available at 9 p.m.
Exactly. And it's incredibly insidious because the always-on trap actually feels highly productive in the short term.
Oh, totally. You feel like you're crushing it.
You are churning out responses, clearing your inbox, getting a hit of dopamine every time you hit send.
Yeah.
It feels like dedication, right up until the exact moment your adrenal system completely crashes.
Because your brain hasn't had a genuine day of rest in 6 months.
Right. You have to actively protect yourself. You have to set hard time boundaries, physically close the laptop, and walk away. But, and this is key, you also have to have a life to walk away to.
Ooh, that's a good point.
If your evenings are completely empty, work will simply expand like a gas to fill that void.
Okay, so let's assume for a second that you, the listener, have mastered this. You've got your fake commute, your triggers are set, you've locked down your boundaries, you have a life outside of work.
The dream scenario.
Right. The next massive hurdle is professional survival. How do you stay relevant and get promoted and remain effective when you are physically invisible to the people writing your performance reviews?
It's tough.
I have to be honest, this is the part that feels the most exhausting to me. Like, pushback time. Shouldn't my work just speak for itself? Why do I have to become my own personal PR firm just because I'm not sitting in a cubicle?
I completely validate how exhausting that feels.
Hmm.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's just the reality of how human organizations function. Office politics didn't magically disappear when we all downloaded Zoom.
To just change shape.
They mutated into information asymmetry. Look, in a traditional physical office, there's a massive secondary layer of communication happening all day long.
The informal stuff.
Right. It's the meeting after the meeting.
Yeah.
It's the walk to the elevator, the quick chat by the coffee machine. That is often where crucial context is actually shared, where relationships are forged, and where decisions are truly finalized.
And when you're remote, you're just entirely locked out of that hallway whisper network.
Exactly. So your work cannot speak for itself because the people making the decisions might not even know your work exists unless you intentionally place it directly in their line of sight.
Which means out of sight, out of mind is a literal career hazard now.
It really is.
So you have to engineer your own visibility. The tech says you cannot ever skip your one-on-one meetings with your manager. Those are your absolute lifeline.
Treat them like gold.
Yeah, and you have to consistently over-communicate what you're accomplishing. You need to actively volunteer for cross-functional projects that put your name in front of different departments.
Yes, high visibility projects.
And when you are on a video call, you cannot just be a silent black box with your mic muted. You have to speak up, participate, and make your presence felt in that digital room.
And you really have to master the nuances of digital communication too. Text strips away all human prosody. You lose the tone, the micro-expressions, the context.
Right, so a simple message can sound furious.
Exactly. People tend to assume the worst intent when an email is blunt. So the rule is you have to default to video calls for anything complex, sensitive, or emotionally charged.
To save the nuance.
Yes. And you have to eliminate micro-stressors, like sending a message that just says, hey, and then typing for 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh, my heart rate spikes just thinking about that.
Right. It opens a cognitive loop of anxiety for the recipient. Just state your question up front. And crucially, you have to truly internalize that asynchronous communication does not mean an immediate response is required.
Now, all of that dynamic gets exponentially more complicated when we introduce the hybrid mess.
Oh, the hybrid mess.
A hybrid schedule, part remote, part in office, sounds on paper like this perfect utopian compromise.
Sounds lovely.
But if it isn't managed with, surgical precision, it quickly becomes the absolute worst of both worlds.
Because hybrid only works brilliantly when the schedule is deeply purposeful. If the entire team agrees to be in the physical office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, specifically for collaborative whiteboarding and relationship building, then great. The commute is worth it. You're coming in for human connection.
But it is an absolute disaster when you're forced to commute an hour in heavy traffic, only to sit at a hot desk in a barren office with your noise-canceling headphones on.
Just doing the exact same solitary video calls you could have done in your work sweatpants at home.
Yes, it breeds immense resentment. And worse, it creates proximity bias.
That's the real danger.
Right. When leadership spends most of their time in the office, they inherently give preferential treatment to the staff who are physically sitting within their line of sight. They get the better mentorship and the most interesting projects.
And that proximity bias destroys company culture faster than almost anything else. It creates a literal two-tiered class system of employees.
It really does.
Which brings us to the most empowering aspect of all of this, really, taking control. Once you understand the mechanisms of information asymmetry, proximity bias, and these psychological boundaries, you can use that knowledge to negotiate the exact setup you need.
But you can't just ask for remote work as a personal favor.
Right.
Or just a nice perk. You have to build a rigorous business case.
Absolutely.
You pitch it based on the company's goals. You point out that without the commute, you can dedicate 2 extra hours of deep, uninterrupted focus to a specific project on Wednesdays.
You have to address their anxieties up front.
Right. If they're worried about communication dropping off, you proactively hand them a detailed communication SLA, like a service level agreement of exactly how and when you will be reachable.
And the most effective tactic here is proposing a structured trial period. You aren't asking them to rewrite the entire corporate handbook on day one.
That's too scary for them.
Right. You ask to test working remotely 2 days a week for the next 90 days. You establish clear, objective performance metrics to evaluate its success at the end of that period. It lowers the stakes for the manager and shifts the whole conversation from a philosophical debate to an operational experiment.
That's so smart. But I have to ask, how do you decode a refusal? Let's say you do everything right. You build a flawless business case, you address the concerns, propose the trial period, and your boss still flat out says no.
It happens.
How do you know if there is a legitimate operational issue blocking you, or if it's just a fundamental lack of trust from leadership?
This raises such an important question. You force clarity by asking one specific question. What would need to be true for you to say yes?
Ooh, I love that phrasing.
Right. You ask them to articulate the exact business metric or operational reality that prevents the arrangement. And if they cannot give you a valid, solvable business reason, if they just shrug and say, well, we just prefer to have butts in seats, then you have been handed a massive gift.
Because you have your answer.
A crystal clear answer. It is not an operational issue. It is a fundamental culture clash. They either do not trust you, or management is entirely anchored to an outdated, surveillance-based leadership style.
Wow.
And once you know that truth, you are fully empowered. You can either accept that reality and stay, or you can take your skills to a company that is genuinely remote first.
Which leads to a surprisingly comforting realization, which is that it is perfectly okay to just tap out. It is okay to change your mind.
Oh.
Like if you try remote work and you find that you are consistently, profoundly lonely, or you notice your career trajectory has stalled out, or you just cannot maintain the boundaries and work is devouring your ends, remote work might just not be for you right now.
And there is zero shame in that whatsoever. Human life stages are fluid. What works brilliantly for you in one season of your career might be an absolute disaster in the next.
Right.
The worst thing you can do is suffer through the isolation of remote work in silence, just because society currently dictates that you are supposed to be grateful for it.
Exactly. So to pull all of this together for you, the reality is that remote work is just a tool. It is not a moral victory. It demands intense self-awareness, rigorous boundary setting, and really aggressive, intentional communication to function without tearing your life apart.
It's work to make it work.
It really is. But the future of work is flexible, which is incredible because it means you ultimately get to choose what actually fits your life.
And, you know, as we close out this deep dive, there's one final, really profound implication I'd love to leave you with regarding that isolation we discussed.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
For nearly a century, the physical office has been the default center of human interaction, routine, and community for millions of adults.
That's true.
If that is no longer the case, if the corporate office is completely decentralized and no longer serves as our primary social hub, what is going to rise up to take its place?
Right.
With the absolute death of the daily commute and the return of those countless hours to our lives, Are we about to witness a massive renaissance in local neighborhoods, civic groups, and community centers? If our work no longer inherently dictates our social circle and our daily environment, who will you actively choose to become in your newly reclaimed free time?
That is the ultimate question, because at the end of the day, if you are going to take that all-inclusive vacation of remote work, you better make sure you actually like the destination you're building for yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.